One rare puppy was born. Later, the owners discovered this fascinating secret about him. What would you do if the rest of your dog's puppies were entirely normal, but one of them was quite different? Would you be concerned about that? Would you be fascinated? Or would you be ecstatic? When her dog gave birth to a bizarre and rare puppy, one woman just didn't know how to handle the situation, and she still can't believe that it has occurred. The dog in question was born in July 2017, and Louise Sutherland from Scotland was there to supervise and see it all unfold right in front of her. Louise Sutherland comes from Gulspie in the Scottish Highlands, and there is no doubt that when her beloved family dog fell pregnant, her life changed forever. As a keen animal lover for as long as she can remember, this mother and wife were surrounded by pets. Her house is full of both cats and dogs, and she is no stranger to seeing all sorts of strange and beautiful animal behavior. However, when her golden Labrador welcomed a fresh litter of cute puppies into her family, she encountered something entirely fresh. Louise has many dogs under her roof, but there is no doubt that her golden retriever has a reserved place in her heart. This is a specific tale about Rio, their beloved 3-year-old retriever. Rio had her first litter of puppies a year or so ago, and Louise felt as if she knew what to expect from the experience the second time around. During pregnancy or birth, there were 0 complications, and all of the puppies seemed uniform and perfect. That's why Louise presumed her second litter would be as easy and as perfect as the first one. After a relatively fast 5-hour delivery, Rio welcomed 5 new cute puppies into the world during her first pregnancy. Louise and her family decided not to keep the puppies, but rather to sell them to loving families who would look after them and give them the attention they definitely deserved. While seeing them go from her home was hard, they realized it was for the best, and they knew they would flourish in a different setting and on their own. It was a method which they had become accustomed, but things would become even odder the next time. Louise thought that Rio's second litter would follow a comparable routine because they had passed through the process of welcoming a fresh litter into their brood and then selling the puppies when they were old enough. They prepared for the imminent arrival and filled their home with supplies so that they could look after the new puppies until they were all sufficiently mature and old enough to be given new homes. At the time, they had no idea that things were going in a completely opposite direction, and one of the puppies wasn't going to leave their home. After a fairly ordinary pregnancy, Rio finally gave birth in early July 2017. She was as safe as she could be, and they were just waiting for the day the second litter came. Rio welcomed 9 cute little puppies into their home, and she looked as proud as ever when all of them punched up into her belly. Yet while Rio got used to living as a fresh, new mother again, Louise and her daughter realized that something about one of the pups was a little bit off. They noticed it because he was very distinct and different from the remainder of the litter. Although her pregnancy went along just fine, the same could not, unfortunately, be said for the birth itself. At the time, the process was under the eyes of both Louise and her daughter, Claire, and they were in the first rows to watch the magical moment. They didn't want to intervene, but instead wanted to make sure their beloved family dog was comfortable and safe throughout the main event's length. Yet when they realized that something was wrong, they realized they had to step in for the safety of both Mom and her pups. After all, they didn't want anything to happen to either the mother or the puppies. They could see, as Louise and Claire watched from the sidelines, that the labor was not going according to plan. Rio looked uncomfortable, and they could see that one of her puppies was stuck when they went and looked at her up close. They saw the head poking out, and they saw Rio becoming increasingly distracted as well. For this reason, Louise and Claire realized they had a choice to make. Either they could hope their dog would push through, or they could step in and help her out. They decided to adopt the second approach. Louise observed during an interview with The Sun that when they noticed that their dog was in pain, the birth process quickly turned into an all-hands-on-deck. They knew they weren't able to sit by and do nothing, so they decided to put on their gloves and go into action. They helped take the first puppy out to offer some respite to Rio, and it seemed that she required all the assistance that she could get. Once the first puppy was born and Rio made sure he was alive and well, the remaining 8 puppies followed without any further intervention from the family. Although Louise had just a year or so before experienced the same thing with Rio, she couldn't shake the feeling of being totally overwhelmed by the scenario. Watching her beloved dog welcome an adorable litter into the world was an amazing moment, and she couldn't think Rio was so powerful. The golden retriever had immediately taken her puppies to her side, but the more Louise looked at the litter, the more she realized it was out of the ordinary. One of the pups was a distinctly different color to the remainder. Golden Labrador dog puppies are almost always a comparable color as far as their coat is concerned. Its golden color is easy to recognize, so one of the puppies stood out like a sore thumb. This specific puppy was mint green in color instead of looking golden as his brothers and sisters. His fur's color was unlike anything previously seen by Louise or Claire, and they were immediately struck by just how striking it was. Why and how was a green puppy born to their beloved family dog? Was it even normal? The mom and daughter were surprised by the bizarre tinge in the puppy's fur, but they were also highly worried. There was a big difference between that particular puppy and the rest of the litter, and they couldn't help but wonder if that meant that they were in some sort of risk. They wondered if it was sick and wondered if urgent medical care was required. Louise and Claire decided to look at the phenomenon on the internet and see if it would point them in the right direction, to assist them in their decision on what to do. Fortunately, they were assured by a fast internet search that the green puppy was in no instant risk. The papers they stumbled across, however, also made Claire and Louise aware that they were in fact in the presence of a very rare puppy. At the moment, they had no clue that their green puppy was something unique, but they quickly found that he was going to go down as an enigma in history books. Mother and daughter were happy about the good news, but they could not find the right words to describe their feelings. Who would ever have thought that Rio would bring such a rare puppy into the world? In reality, Rio's green puppy is one of only a handful of other puppies to be born with such coloring around the globe. The amount of animals that come into the globe with a green tinge to their fur is astronomically low, so when a fresh one is born, it is always exciting. You will be both pleased and happy to understand, however, that this phenomenon is not due to a health condition or some other sort of flaw. Instead, there is a very scientific reasoning, and many are unaware of it. If you know about dogs and their anatomy, you may have heard about something called biliverdin. This is a green bile pigment discovered in the womb of a dog. While it is not known what the precise function of this bile pigment is, all female dogs have it within their wombs. This indicates that it has a function to play throughout the pregnancy cycle in giving essential nutrients or food to the puppies, perhaps to assist them in development and flourishment within the womb. It is speculated that it is necessary for their survival. However, in terms of their manufacturing of biliverdin, dogs are not the only animals that have it. Human beings also have this pigment in their bodies, and we have to thank this specific pigment for making our bruises look both yellow and green in color. Although this is a natural method, in fact, too much biliverdin can be quite hazardous for the human body. This is because an excess of the bile can trigger jaundice in our blood, circulatory system, and body tissue. This is usually more prevalent in children and newborns, however, than grown adults. As if this wasn't enough, within the animal kingdom, this bile pigment can also be seen in different other species. This applies especially to much marine fish that have biliverdin in their blue-green blood. And yes, you have guessed it, moths and butterflies also have this pigment, and frogs' eggs are usually found with traces of biliverdin as well. However, you can rarely see that all these animals contain this pigment. So what was so unique about the puppy? Why did the biliverdin influence his fur's color? You can't normally see biliverdin's incidence among puppies, even though it is always there within the bloodstream. The pigment is tucked away and not noticeable to the eye. A rather unusual phenomenon occurs, however, on rare occasions, and the biliverdin may find itself mixed up in the womb's amniotic fluid. While biliverdin's existence stains the fur, it has no other life-threatening effects on the puppy. Indeed, it's just a temporary change of color. The green tinge should become less evident as the weeks go by, as the fur continues to develop and the puppy is washed and licked by their mom. In the end, the puppy will look like her brothers and sisters, and no one would notice that anything was different. For Rio's puppy, this was the case as well, and eventually the green color completely disappeared. Despite knowing that their puppy would not remain green for the remainder of their lives, Louise and Claire knew it was something unique. Witnessing it had been an incredible experience for them, and they couldn't believe that they could ever see it with their very own eyes, a puppy stained with biliverdin. It was a sight to behold, and although the pups were loved equally, there was something outstanding about the green pup. That's why they knew they had to give him a name that suited his extraordinary look. Mother and daughter wanted to honor the green color the puppy had enjoyed, and they wanted to maintain up with their surroundings' natural home. The Scottish Highlands were the ideal inspiration for the family, known for its greenery, shrubbery, hills, and forests. They ultimately settled on Forest as the puppy's name, and their choice was greeted with positivity. But the hardest part was yet to come, as many puppies' owners will inform you. Louise knew they weren't able to maintain all of their puppies, so they had to decide what to do with them. While Louise would love to keep the 9 puppies under her roof, she knew it wasn't practical and financially impossible. So as they had sold Rio's prior litter, they realized they had to sell the second litter as well. While resigning to having to do this, there was something about Forrest that kept pulling on their heartstrings. Louise and her daughter thought his extraordinary coloring was a sign that he was supposed to remain with the family, and so they chose to do precisely that. They held him, and he's become a powerful and happy golden retriever since that day. While there is no doubt that the incredible coloring of Forrest was a rare event, he's not the only puppy to be born like that. It's not something that happens every day, but over the course of history, there have been a few cases in which owners were astonished by the fact that they welcomed green puppies into their home. More often than not, the tales are gaining tremendous traction in the media around the world, because it is a weird phenomenon for individuals to see. In the home of her owner, another dog welcomed a very comparable green puppy 5 years before Rio pushed Forrest into the world. This specific tale includes a pair named Naomi Grimes and Kyle Murray, who owned a lovely golden Labrador called Buttons. Because the Labrador had fallen pregnant for the first time, Naomi and Kyle did not feel as ready as Louise and her family did. Things got even more complex when a green puppy was added to the mix. However, the couple was determined to assist their beloved dog through the process, and if anything went wrong, they wanted to be by her side. Buttons eventually welcomed 8 cute puppies into the world, and they were also very pleased. When they witnessed the first puppy appearing, they were over the moon, and they were just as excited when the second raised its head. The second puppy, however, had something weird, and the pair realized it had a green tinge on it. To begin with, Naomi and Kyle just thought that the second puppy's slight green coloring was due to some kind of birth liquid. Just as human children are often born with the remains of amniotic sacs surrounding them, they thought the puppy was as well. Because of this, they decided to offer an additional thorough wash to that specific puppy and hoped the tinge would go away. They realized that the coloring wasn't going anywhere though, as they washed the puppy. What made the scenario even weirder was the fact that the little one was the only green puppy in their litter. The pair started to get worried, just like Louise and her daughter, that the second puppy was in some sort of risk. They wondered whether it was correctly breathing, whether its circulatory system was working to its complete ability, and whether it was seriously ill. They also decided to search for the symptoms online before calling the vet. During their quest, they found the bile pigment phenomenon and realized their puppy was as healthy as they could be, even though it was green. Upon discovering that their little puppy was as correct as rain, Naomi and Kyle decided to go ahead and name him. While they weren't going to name the litter because they would eventually sell them all when they were a couple of weeks old, the couple knew they couldn't say farewell to the green guy without offering him a name that fits his looks. Ultimately, after their favorite green superhero, they decided to call their little green Labrador Hulk. They've been extremely sad to see Hulk go, but they've been pleased to see him go to a great home. However, learning that this phenomenon does not just happen in mums and dogs that are golden in color may surprise you. A dog owner named Elaine Cooper got the surprise of her life back in 2017 when her 2-year-old chocolate Labrador, Millie, dropped pregnant with a litter of 1 girl and 4 boys. She could not contain her enthusiasm. Elaine instantly linked with the 1-girl pup because her siblings outnumbered her, but the woman also liked her because of her coloring that made her even more unique. Yes, Millie welcomed into the world her very own green daughter. When Millie gave birth to her little litter, Elaine watched from the sidelines, wondering how her beloved dog can bring such cute little puppies into the world on her own. However, she wasn't confident that nothing was wrong with her when the owner spotted the green pup. She thought, like Naomi and Kyle, that the discoloration in the puppy was from the liquid in the womb. Millie was a chocolate Labrador after all, so Elaine was completely expecting a dark skin litter. What she got wasn't quite as prevalent, as she had a green coat on her single female pup. She followed her instinct as Millie marveled at the sight of her pups and started licking them all clean. Elaine assumed that this act would clean her amniotic residue from the pup and leave her with her natural fur below. And that was the case, but it wasn't the outcome she expected. She still had the puppy's green tinge and was trying to laugh it off. She couldn't imagine why a dog would be green, and she believed she saw something that was not there. Elaine made the decision, like all other dog owners before her, to search the green tinge on the internet to make sure her puppy wasn't in danger. When she was happy with the reply and knew she had no need to call in reinforcements to assist with her health, she realized she could lastly give her very own name to each litter member. Once again, Elaine wished to settle on a name that would suit the green coloring, and she settled on Fifi ultimately. This was referring to Shrek's princess Fiona. It's incredible to believe dogs around the globe have welcomed green pups into their litter, but on very rare occasions nonetheless. When such cases happen, news stations and newspapers appear to go wild because it is such a strange phenomenon. However, it is important to note that when they are born with a green tinge to their fur, the puppies are not in any way in danger. In no manner does the bile harm them or hurt them. Even though you've now learned of such a rare phenomenon, there are many dog owners out there who do not have a clue about the situation. They may have never before seen such a thing and may not have heard of anything like it. For these owners, it can be a terrifying ordeal. While most of them will sell the puppies when they're old enough, this doesn't prevent them from caring separately for each of them. They want them to be pleased and healthy, and for those who are not conscious, a green puppy often places a spanner in the works. Fortunately, the ease of access to the internet now enables owners to Google the symptoms and green tinge before making any rash choices. They realize they don't have to take them to the vets. They understand that their pups are in no immediate danger, and they acknowledge that they have been witnessing something really magical. This is an incredibly rare occurrence, and a gift to anyone seeing these green puppies make their way into life all over the globe. So when is the next green puppy going to be born? There's no way to say what your puppy's going to look like, or whether it's going to have green tinge until it takes its first breath. So every new birth is really interesting. Hopefully, the exposure around this strange and rare situation will make it possible for owners to understand that their green pups are as healthy and happy as the remainder of the litter. But in the process, they sport a distinct color. After all, when green is your favorite color, it's quite fun.